Hi everyone, thank you for attending today's webinar. Today's webinar is organized by AiSP and SFA on cybersecurity awareness workshop. So before we begin, let us go through some house rules for the attendees. Please note that this session will be recorded, and do mute your microphone and type in your queries on the chat function or on the Q&A function in Zoom. So if you experience any technical problem using Zoom on your devices, please exit the session and rejoin the webinar. So this is the program for today. So before we begin, let us hand over the time to Michael, who is SFA Cyber Risk Subcommittee Chair, to do a short opening. Michael, please.
Hello, hi everyone. Let me try to share my script. Just give me a minute. Here we go. Okay. I trust you can see the screen right now. So this is actually our website. So just as a quick introduction of Singapore FinTech Association. So currently Singapore SFA, for Singapore FinTech Association, we have close to 1,000 members, or rather 1,000 FinTech companies. So largely most of our members are actually SME. So when AiSP approached us to do this workshop for the SME digital adoption, so I thought it was a very good idea because since most of the composite of our members are SME and they are in the FinTech industry, right? So another thing I'd like to share on this subcommittee is since last year, October, so we have set up this cyber risk subcommittee. Consists of 4 committee members, which myself as the chairperson of the subcommittee, right? And then along with my colleagues Kenny, Paul, and Hing. Some of you might know them in the industry, in the cybersecurity and also fintech industry. So primarily, why are we set up? The main reason is this subcommittee is formed to promote the awareness of potential losses or damages resulting to the use of technology or cyber attack, primarily focused for the fintech industry. As you know, most of the fintech now we do a lot of transactions or online transaction or data that will be transmitted to the internet, to the cyberspace, and of course even to the blockchain in the case of cryptocurrency, digital asset, and so on. You know, so in recent months or in recent years, there's a more prevalent use of cryptocurrency or prevalent trading as well. So definitely we foresee that there will be more risks or cyber risks associated to the industry as a whole. So that's the vision to sort of to promote awareness and also to bridge the understanding and also to a certain extent mitigate the risk of cyber risk for the industry. Then next we have our mission, right? So for the mission, we have 4 key areas. One is engagement with regulators. So the regulators in our perspective will be, of course, MAS, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, and of course CSA, Cybersecurity Agency. So with MAS, let me just put this. So yeah. So with MAS, recently MAS itself has also launched certain guidelines. So there are cyber hygiene procedures. There's also cyber threat control methodologies that is being shared by MAS, and of course the technology risk management guideline, which is relevant to all the financial institutions that includes fintech companies, right? As far as cyber CSA is concerned, CSA, we have worked quite closely with CSA as well, again on the angle of promoting awareness, like what we are doing now with, of course, the next one is to engage with the industry. So engaging with industry players, organizations like AiSP, and more importantly with companies like Cisco, Tanium, and all the leading cybersecurity firms or solution providers, so that we could have a forum and to see how we can better improve the policy and processes or best practice for the industry. So yeah, so I think that's just to keep my introduction short, because I'm also very excited to hear from the rest of the panelists in the area of how we can sort of see more cyber awareness practices in this SME industry and for SFA members. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you,
Karen?
Michael. So now
Let me
let's
unshare my screen.
Yep, sure, no problem. So now let's hand over the time to Tony, who will be sharing with us the importance of cybersecurity and solutions.
Hi, thanks for the quick introduction. Thanks, Karen. Yeah, my name is Tony. In the next maybe 25 minutes or so, I'll kind of run through in terms of, let me just kind of start bringing up my screen first. Okay, kind of focus on the key aspect of importance of cybersecurity and solution. Bear in mind what quick intro for myself. Let me just. So I'm part of the AiSP committee member, chairing the CAAP. Maybe about 15 years in the industry, co-chair of AiSP, CAAP, focus on SME. That means part of my volunteer work is to help, how do we empower SME to be better in this new digital age? Not just better in terms of operating their businesses, also be more aware in terms of some of the key risks that they might encounter when they go online, right? So, but as a lot of SME are starting this journey, our team is also helping them to charter and to create some awareness in terms of what are the basics in terms of cyber hygiene. So we have to be cautious about the maturity of our SMEs today in terms of their digital journey, and that will follow in terms of their cybersecurity journey. So hence, we also started kind of what we call cloud security special interest group within AiSP. I think that the key thing is also to gather like-minded folks in this world where digital is just one part of it, and a lot of this are running on the cloud, synonymous to a service or applications or any services that is rendered remotely, virtually for SME today. I think as part of the passion we're doing is sharing back what we have learned, including all the panelists today, sharing our knowledge as much as we can to the community, to the wider community within SME. So a bit of AiSP here. We started on 2008. It's an independent cybersecurity association. We kind of gather. So folks who are running this, including myself, we all volunteers who kind of come together to run this association to create a lot more awareness. But I think one of the focus is to develop and support, enhance the industry technical competency and management of expertise. So I guess in my view or in my focus is really, and this topic is on the SME side. How do we help them in terms of developing that awareness, or even inherently within their organization, to be more competent in this digital realm? And also same time promoting some of the I would say integrity status or interest groups of information security. So we're kind of bringing one part of it is developing the industry, myself focusing on SME. The other part of it is how can we link them to interest folks who want to kind of help the SME, be it from the industry or be it from a personal capacity. At the same time, giving back to the SME where they can uplift. So what are the areas they can uplift themselves in this new digital age, right? And at the same time, promoting development or increasing the cybersecurity knowledge as what we are doing today. Bring the SME together, bring the fintech associate community together to kind of share this knowledge across the community. At the same time, I think we all know that the stability of the economy today somehow is tied back to how resilient and how secure our digital economy is, right? So this is also one part of the mantra that we're also trying to support in general. So actually, our vision is usually to promote a safe cyberspace with strong and vibrant cybersecurity ecosystem. I think we do already have it. I guess it's more the next step, right? How do we kind of empower a lot of the SME to also enjoy the same status in terms of being digitally equipped, and then capitalizing the opportunity that we have in terms of in terms of digital age, right? Where they can now potentially grow their business in what we call a borderless economy going forward. So a bit of the AiSP background, but I think what we want to do here is where AiSP comes in terms of supporting the communities is a few prongs, right? We have the members who are participating, who help to give back, volunteers to give talk, volunteers to run some program, and the programs are on the strategic trust in terms of body of knowledge, some of the talent program that we reach out to, even the institution, and some of the I would say some of the content that we are putting in terms of knowledge series will be in terms of like a webcast that we're running. We'll be participating or working with other associations looking at specialized certification. Or we ourselves are starting to look at special interest groups as well. I think one thing for sure is in terms of QISP is actually a certification that will bring on board to complement existing I would say certification that's available in the market today. So this is more from advanced where we look at it from helping individual companies advancing their knowledge and awareness of cybersecurity. Then second thing, once they understand it, how they can connect, right? We can understand is not enough. How they can reach out to help themselves, right? So there are the regional and local ecosystem where we work with folks, which the corporate partners, the academic partners, and we kind of also have one of my committee members who focus helping the so there's a lady in tech, so we also have the ladies in cyber, bring more diversity into this professional. And last but not least is where this CAAP is coming from, right? Looking at it from a cybersecurity awareness and advisory program, pushing out content, pushing out awareness to various associations across Singapore in the SME realm, not just on the SME realm, but at the individual capacity even. So towards the end, what we talk about Excel is really trying to uplift the entire ecosystem, right? So we talk about validated security professional where they come and come form like a council. And we do have things like recognition program, like a cybersecurity award and student volunteer award. We kind of two prompts, right? One, starting to build up the pipeline in terms of professional interest in Singapore. At the same time, recognizing what we have who have made significant contribution to the professional or the industry across Singapore landscape. So I guess this is where AiSP's vision or pushing in terms of our vision and reaching out to the industry. So a bit about the CAAP program is where I'm leading, looking at SMEs and is trying to drive digital security awareness and readiness, right? Supported by our valued partner CSA. So we focus on a few things, right? In terms of security awareness and training. So we do like, I think towards the end, we touch on what kind of quick enablement program that we have put together for SME. Because they might have limited understanding, they do not have resources and strength. How do we kind of help them to kickstart that whole journey? At the same time, we're starting to put together in terms of security knowledge and resources where they can actually have not just from our side, but I think trying to aggregate other information available, make it easier for them to consume. At the same time, through our ecosystem, looking at to see offer the SME in terms of certain support from a technology or from a solution or services point of view, right? So these are three areas that we're looking at as a committee. So just kind of a quick snapshot of what AiSP is helping to drive and help the community, and specifically CAAP, where we're trying to look at and focus on helping the SME. So I guess a lot of the SME today are where we're coming from is they might be aware, they might not be aware. But in terms of looking at the current state of the SME development in Singapore today, second thing is actually looking at what are the areas that quickly can help the SME to kind of kickstart their program in terms of services, in terms of grants, or even in terms of recommendation. And last but not least is really how we also have been pushing certain programs to kickstart the SME journey into the digital or the security realm quickly. So I think this is a screenshot I got from a scene. It's actually from Dunkirk, right? So actually, a lot of the SME are struggling today. They are facing unprecedented danger. Maybe not life danger, but in terms of existential, they are struggling, and they are trying to go into digital. But the thing is, they have limited resources in terms of financial muscle, right? So with this COVID, they in fact have this double. I mean, there are loss of revenue, so they struggle to keep afloat. Not to say they have to invest further to drive into the digital realm. So there's a lot of disruption in terms of their business model as well. As we all seen, the lockdown, everything has kind of moved everything to digital. So it's not every businesses today are well equipped or well informed or even understood what does it mean by going digital. It's not just having um, a, a digital presence on the app or something, but they need to understand in terms of how that changes their business model as well, and in fact their revenue model. So it's global, right? So it's not just Singapore; it's across the globe. So there's no way for any SME today to escape this current phenomenon or this pandemic. So they are also navigating in a very choppy, I would say, a very no one knows what will happen. I mean, we are kind of seeing towards the end of the tunnel, but we are not sure how long this end of the tunnel looks, right? So really, nobody knows um, what is the end, how long does it take, what's going to be, what's greeting everybody at the end of this tunnel. So you can see on the right hand side, it's really life changing. A lot of them are feeling threatened, but they know they need to change regardless how small or big their boat is, right? They need to charge into really untested water. But where we kind of look at is what are the SMEs doing today? Are they doing anything, or are they not doing anything? So if you can see today, I guess COVID has kind of a new tech name, right? If you look at the industry, COVID is actually a driver for digital transformation. So a lot of the workforces are working remotely, and they continue to work remotely. In fact, most of the survey done, 74% of it, if you believe, they will have to have some form of remote working. And we've seen the trend is coming in as well, where a lot of the employees themselves are preferring to work remotely. But that also brings additional challenges to the operating and even some of the security hygiene that SME has to partake, which they might not be ready. So there's a lot of there's a huge acceleration in terms of cloud adoption, definitely. So there's a 70% of it. Before that they were thinking of doing cloud services, but after that more of them are looking at to adopt that cloud services. So it's not just on running on cloud platform; they're also looking at other services. So this is actually more, this number. In fact, recent survey done is actually more than 85% of something like that. So that that itself creates a new unknown factor for a lot of the companies, for SME, because they traditionally are running like a small pop shop or maybe 20, 30 people with limited services online, and some of this are managed internally. But then the other thing is also because of the remote nature of work, and the distribution of devices can be challenging. Managing those devices could be challenging, and employees have different preferences. They like to bring their own device, right? They like to use their own branded device because they feel that it's more productive. So there's a lot, then you can see there's a huge number that prefers that. But that creates a new frontier for challenges for SME, where they feel that they're losing control in terms of their deployment of the services and even their footprint in terms of technology. I think last but not least is actually a lot of the companies doesn't realize that when going digital, doesn't matter how big or small your business is today, digitalization brings along more data collection. And what more data collection brings along is other things in terms of privacy, in terms of security. How do I make sure that the data that I'm collecting is safely secured in places that it should be there and should not be accessed by anyone? I think last, but the other thing is, if I have those how huge data, how can I use it correctly and ethically and make sure that it's not being compromised? I think there's a huge emphasis today in Singapore talking about privacy, especially around data, because with the new digital economy, you can see that there's a significant amount of data being collected. It doesn't matter how big or small, right? The data that is collected, as long as something can be referred to someone else, that becomes a information that has to be treasured and kept properly. So even imagine enterprise that has the enough resources to do that. What happens to the SME? They have roles that are individual playing multiple roles. How do kind of empower that? How can it be intelligent enough or aware enough to look at in that landscape which they might not be aware or doing that previously, right? So you can see these are some of the drivers that maybe, I mean, COVID is actually one of the main driver, but these are the evidence that you can see that the SMEs are growing. But you can see, okay, going online is not just having online presence, right? But there are other things that is actually keeping some of these companies awake, right? In terms of security breaches, especially by humans. So imagine you have more people, you have more manual stuff collecting data, and those breaches actually can be increases. In fact, 25%. So every time you do, you collect more data, your risk factor becomes exponential. How to do? So these are the things that we look at. Um, so there's a huge, I would say there's, because of, I guess it's not new, right? Email communication is something very common, but nowadays there are a lot of phishing attempts online, but all these are through any form of social engineering. Phishing is just one of them, but this is actually a worrying state, because a lot of this attacks can be easily compromised by an individual who is careless, which you can see on the amount of the numbers that is actually being surveyed. So 68, I believe this will be more, right? Based on what Accenture has looked at, 68% of the business leaders feel their security risks are increasing. Definitely, once your digital footprint increases, the amount of risk increase as well, right? So, oops. So there's you can see there's like item number 6, we talk about data breaches and all those things, which is actually common nowadays. Even in Singapore, we like PDPC and PDPA, the kind of data, and there is a lot more news in terms of data breaches which is happening. The reason why that is actually important to make public is to get the public aware such things that do happen, and get the companies themselves understand the situation, that how it rises, what impact it might take, right? Because this is where some of the companies might not be aware. Even they talk about data privacy, data security, they might not be aware what's the implication, so on and so forth. So I think last but not least, the number 11 is password managed. Why? Because as more services, SME might not have the fancy thing about a single sign-on. Every service they might subscribe to might have a different password and ID, because they're all managed differently. And this number is going to increase. So with this increase, what happens, right? So, I mean, this is just 5 items, that is not exhaustive list of risks, just basic fundamental issues that they might come across for SME. Right? So brute force attack is very simple, where if you don't have proper protection to your system and with sufficient, if your system is not well taken care of in terms of security, for example, the amount of brute force needed to get into the network or the system or the services itself can be very easy, because as the name implies, the brute force, right? Falsely getting in. So if you don't protect your system enough, and SME sometimes don't do that, because they might not know how much is enough, right? I think the second thing, credential stuffing is actually quite I would say it's common, because it's very easy to buy a bunch of password and then try and log in through using those passwords, especially if you're using cloud services or application that might have been compromised. Some of the services or credential might have been leaked out, right? Adversary can actually use that to try and log in and try and get access to other services that might not have. I think phishing and spear phishing is actually where individual carelessness do come into play in terms of that. I think malware attacks is common, because it's not just common in SME, across every industry and every size of the segment of the businesses, because someone might download something carelessly. It could be an attachment, could be just through the chat. I send something. There's some malware that's being attached to that particular attachment, get installed, right? So, and some nowadays the malware are ever evolving. If the individual who got infected might not even know. That's also a problem to SME, because it might be a issue that is ongoing for a long time before it get detected, because sometimes it's really lack of awareness, right? But I think last but not least is actually a ransomware where why is it something I want to call is because for SME sometimes for larger corporation they might get held ransom. The system might be locked up, but sometimes if done well, I think recent incidents where some in an operation that got attacked by ransomware refused to pay because they've done proper backup and restore, right? But SME sometimes they don't have that operation capability or efficiency, and they might not have the ability to do such a massive storage or massive backup or real-time backup. So that also disrupts it. And they do have instances where through ransomware, businesses got shut down because of that. And so those are big, because you look at it, it's not just a risk itself, it's an existential risk for the SMEs them to even be working and participate in this new digital realm. So this is not the exhaustive list. I'm just highlighting some of the examples that is actually applicable as SME gets into the digital realm in this new age, right? So some of the simple strategy we look at based on our understanding can do. So I think a very simple thing is SME must have the companies, the businesses owner or the business operation must understand what are the assets they are available. Make sure they're tagged and managed correctly, like versioning devices, who's owning it, all these things, so that don't get out of hand or lost, because that becomes a potential threat that might get into the enterprise easily through that device that might be lost. I think protecting the network is one thing, right? Network is actually, because with getting online, everything is on the system, and the realm of the SME, the business is not just within the enterprise. They need to open up, right, for remote working. So they need to understand in terms of what are the areas they need to protect, especially things like bring your own device policies. What are the do's and don'ts? They cannot totally shut it down, not to allow individual to use their device to access, because we are all connected and we need to be mobile and remote, right? So these are options that businesses have to kind of start thinking about. I think safeguard your access credential, especially on systems that are critical, admin access and all this. Those should be priced and managed properly. That's something. I think maintain backup and recovery is something that is important, which is often overlooked by a lot of businesses, because they might do a backup, but they might not have validated the backup. That's also a problem as well. So they need to figure out, they need to actually have that hygiene or the practice or the mindset to set it up properly, because especially customer data. I think once they lose the customer data, what happens is maybe they lost the customer totally. So this is where business owner has to actually, businesses who are operating today need to understand that. I think the training and awareness is something that can be done. There's huge tons of materials out there. There are e-learnings. Even government is pushing some of the self-assessment that is helping this SME to take all this for free, right? So these are kind of basic steps that if SME were to kind of start this ball rolling, at least they would know how to charter their journey forward, right? So a quick understanding how government is helping a budget, which is helping the SMEs to get cost fees and all those things, to get people trained in the company to understand, so they can take training and government subsidize that. I think on top of that, to build much stronger digital community in Singapore, is we kind of launched the Go Digital program. And Go Digital program has a bunch of things in terms of grants, in terms of prescribed software that they can actually used. And usually what happens is now you have grants that is actually where governments covers part of the expenses, and also like other things in terms of help available, capability assessment tool, where individual or the business folks in the business who are looking at, even this is actually more generic, anyone who is in a company can actually take the awareness assessment to understand how capable he or she is running or managing some of the services. I've mentioned before the pre-approved, there's a pre-approved vendor that can be. And I think last but not least is like where there's like a security by design consultation where government is pushing some of the services out where businesses can actually leverage on at a market lower than market prices, right? So this is where they can actually drive um, the awareness or create at least a snapshot where they are today. Some of the essential too, I won't go through the list, but these are the list that is actually coming up from the approved list of items that SME can sign up for at a discounted rate. And on top of that, with the grants that's available to them. Yeah, this is actually the cybersecurity strategy alternative where they can actually tap on for expertise if they need to have ongoing 360-degree measure to understand where they are today, really, essentially to help the business owner to take a snapshot, and based on snapshot, what are the steps they need to take for the next step, especially working with experts in terms of the security service provider. That really helps them in terms of chartering, right? Because the as mentioned, the lack of resources, that awareness puts them in a high risk in terms of getting compromised without even them themselves know. I think that's also a worrying part as well. So I think kind of run through in terms of the where a quick snapshot of the SME landscape in Singapore and some of the worrying sign that might happen once a lot more SME gets on board in terms of the worries that they have. But at the same time, where government is providing and pushing some of this initiative to help SME to kickstart in the right way, especially with the list of approved tools and services that at least give the business owner or the business operator or the organization themselves to understand, have they done this at the very least to start off with, right? But from our point of view, from AiSP, why we're also helping business and individual is also to create awareness as well. So we have this three-part level where we talk about awareness as part of the SME, providing certain fundamentals. Then we also have we can probably soon going to publish what we call a body of knowledge, where it's not deep for all topics. It's a broad spectrum where individual or the business can actually take and look at what are the areas of cybersecurity rooms covers. They might go beyond them. They might not be aware that such things they have to take care of. So this is a bad body of knowledge that we can be shared and give them a good indicator limits where they want to start looking at, and then they start to. So it's not meant to be deep, but it's more of a broad spectrum of security areas in various technology or even various adoption or practices. At the end of the day, it's actually this is where we're trying to build a self-sustainable ecosystem where vendors, services provider, government coming together, providing that platform, not just the platform, but pushing the awareness what is available for the business owner. And we are also working with the Business Trade Association to bring all this awareness to, so we can't do it alone. We work with SFA today to kind of reach out to business, to companies. So we're also working with other agencies as well. So at the end of the day, is to create a common starting point for everybody, because there's I mean, as part of the journey, we can start and onboard the SME to understand what they need to do. At least everybody start from the same step, and then we can actually help them, or the industry can help them, especially the ecosystem can participate to help them to charter that next step. So we also have a kind of a roadmap for SME today if they want to start off looking at or to do some assessment, right? Some enhanced security awareness training we do kind of do have on a regular basis. And we also have, as mentioned, we're also starting to publish some of the what we call a book of knowledge, and we're soon to launch a kind of a portal where SME can actually come in and look at what are the options available, ecosystem vendors and services available, grants as a maybe not a one-stop shop, but at least as a first one of the stop they can actually get information from. And then last but not least, really the SME vendors and ecosystem and the grants, pushing all this as a package to SME. So we hope us aligning back to our vision, a safer cyber space, and in my context, the SME themselves. And we have the kind of a modular kind of roadmap for SME to kind of look at where they are. And then typically is right from the start, they go through from a digital business. What does it mean by being digital. And then at the end, like module 6, right? If you are digital, if you have data, and you have system running remotely and in the internet, if you have incidents happening, what should do, and you should not panic. So what this course is meant to help SME or the business owners to understand what they need to do when they do go on the online. It's not just going online. What are the other services or other supporting structure they need to put in place within the organization? So with that, I have kind of come to end my quick intro in terms of some of the SME landscape where AiSP is helping in terms of the SME owners. And I'll pass it back over to Karen.
Thank you, Tony, for sharing. To all the attendees, if you have any questions for Tony, feel free to type in Q&A function Zoom, and we'll address it during our Q&A. So now let's hand over the time to Timothy from Cisco to share more about the future state of cybersecurity and its challenges for SME. Timothy, please.
Hi, thank you. Just a quick AV check.
Yep, we can see your slide to hear you well.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Tony started us off really in a wonderful spot. I mean, he talked about disruption. He talked about the threat of not doing security properly. He talked maybe to the threat of our business if we don't evolve and use the current state of disruption to our advantage and innovate and transform. So that's what we're going to talk about in this session. We're going to talk about digital adoption and some of the concerns that we're facing right now. My name is Tim Snow. I'm an architect within Cisco's Security Technology Group. And so for the next 30 minutes, we're going to talk about what we're seeing, what I'm seeing in the market, what customers are doing, how they're adopting some of our Cisco security products. So I don't think I need to tell everyone how times have changed personally and for the business. I think the changes that we're seeing now, the situation that we're in is obviously going to continue. The world has changed. The workplace has changed. How our workforce works, where they work, the type of devices that they work from has all changed. We've seen a major shift in business strategies, especially if we can't go to the office. If part of your business is based on if physical interactions or seeing people, obviously that has changed. Many of you have adopted technology to kind of to help with that transition. Online education, digital experience, all of that, especially those of us with children. We've probably had a sideline job as being a teacher. What can happen if we do things properly? Well, I think there's a big wave of technology and opportunity that we can leverage. If you look at being able to leverage cloud, this is a great time to potentially, let's say, move applications to the cloud. Being able to maybe scale down physical operations if this works, if your business model does work in a work from home or work from anywhere type of environment. All kinds of new opportunities around AI and e-commerce and that sort of thing. So while there's shifts, there still is opportunity for some. Obviously, in the IT space, specifically for security, it's created some pretty big changes, right? So if we look at the top challenges, alternate products to sell, client payments, and then securing PCs, skipping forward to the business goals of the next 12 months, basically how to stay alive, right? How do we use technology to reduce costs? How do we expand into new distribution channels, protect customers, protect our data, make sure that we can still interact with those customers when our people are potentially working from home? So how do we keep that? How do we keep that information there? You will all get a copy of the slides, so you can take a look at this. So as Tony mentioned, disruption is happening. Being part of the digitization or digital transformation is imperative. Our success and our future is predicated on being able to adapt. And 94% of SMEs in Asia Pacific say they've become more reliant on technology to make sure that we have the proper the business can continue. I think many of us probably know that we're using technology right now. We're talking about how technology is going to help us. So that's my goal in the rest of the session. We're going to talk about the existing security frameworks that are out there. Which ones can we use? Which one is kind of attainable? And we're going to talk about some of the security products that Cisco has that can help you to get there. So this new security perimeter, what have we seen? I think a lot of these transitions actually started pre-COVID, but they were definitely accelerated during the last 15 months or so. Things like moving to the cloud. Many customers that I speak with are talking about what applications can they move to the cloud safely, and then which applications may not be able to move fully to the cloud, but they can move certain components of it to the cloud, because there's huge savings in server costs and maintenance and heating and cooling, or power and cooling, I should say. So there's lots of benefits to that. That's also changed how our WAN looks. Maybe we don't need such big connections to between branches because everything is going to the cloud. We can use low-cost internet, or our users working from home. How do I provide security when my users at home using a SaaS application in the cloud? None of that touches my my corporate infrastructure. How do I secure that environment? Not just the endpoint, not just the cloud, but the communications path between those. So users connecting to different applications, how do we look for users connecting to things they shouldn't be connecting to? And as mentioned previously, what about the whole, we've been talking about BYOD for a while, but what happens when you send out devices to a user that's working from home that's never been touched by IT? How do you onboard that system so that it's compliant with your environment? And then, of course, we know the threat, the benefit and the threat to IoT and OT infrastructure, not just cameras, but sensors, lighting, all that good stuff. Those are all potential entry points for adversaries. So many of you, I'm sure, have heard of zero trust. Zero trust is interesting because it all depends on how you look at the framework. Depending upon whether you're looking at the trunk, the tusk, the side of the elephant in this case, the tail or the leg, you can get a different perspective as to what zero trust is. And part of that's been complicated by the many different frameworks that are out there. You've got ZTX from Forrester, you've got Google's BeyondCorp, you've got Gartner's Carta. Many of them have exactly the same functional definitions with just different kind of terms that they use or requirements. So a zero trust framework is all about securing identity of the device, which may also include authentication and posture. So it's kind of the same across all of them. That's why if you look at a zero trust paper, I think it's a pretty good kind of culmination of all of these things. If for those in fintech or FIs, Maz's paper has really good information around some of the things that you should be doing. So this paper was just released earlier this year. They also talk about least privilege, granting access, minimal access that the endpoint and the user combined should have access to. So multi-factor authentication for SaaS apps or on-premise apps, being able to look at things like shadow IT, the detection of unwanted applications in the environment, and then lastly, securing the workload and securing the data, no matter where that application sits. If it's in my data center or it's in a cloud from AWS, Azure, GCP, or even a private cloud. So those are the things we're going to talk about today. So when I say zero trust is a good framework, what is it? Well, zero trust again is kind of a culmination of all of those things. The main idea is to not implicitly grant trust or access to an asset just because where it is. For example, if I take my laptop into the Cisco office, should I just be given access to everything in the environment because I made it past the building security guards or that I got into the lift? or tailgated into the front door? Probably not. Same thing like an airport. Just because you've went and checked in and got your ticket doesn't mean you make it through security, doesn't mean you make it through immigration, doesn't mean if you're going on an international flight, if you remember what those are, and it doesn't mean you get on the plane. There's different checks that are done irregardless of what you did previously, right? So the airport's a great example there. So we continuously verify anything independently and individually. So once a system is considered online, wired, wireless, or VPN, we still would look at challenging from the application. That way, we can make sure that we've got all of the different checkpoints. Now, a great example of this is VPN. Just because you can connect to a VPN and you have the ability to authenticate, right? So you know the password, you know the username, doesn't necessarily mean you should have access to the application. So these are the kind of things that we're talking about today. So do take a look at Zero Trust. It's got some really good information in the framework. From the Cisco side, we have 3 pillars, very, very simple to look at, because we've got such a broad portfolio of solutions. We don't just focus on one point and say, this is it and forget about everything else. No, we look at the entire architecture and how these systems can work together. The first one, the workforce, understanding who and what is connecting to my environment and then authorizing that system, right? So we're talking about things like multi-factor authentication, certificates, fingerprints, biometrics, making sure that it's a corporate asset, doing a further check on that system, is AV installed or additional capabilities on the device. Maybe even looking at where the user is as well. The second one is, on the far right, is the workplace. So whether I'm in the office connected to my corporate LAN, or I'm in the office connected to Wi-Fi, or I'm over VPN, or I'm sitting at home with a kind of branch of one type device that's connected back into corporate, right? So it's all about how do I authenticate and be authorized wherever I'm connected, and that policy should really follow me wherever I go. That also includes IoT devices and that sort of thing when they're plugged into the environment. And then lastly, the workload, right? This is where our data and our applications reside at. Now, I should be able to provide communications and secure communications and container VM security, regardless of where that system is, whether it's in my traditional data center or it's within the cloud. Okay, so these are some of the questions we should be able to answer. Workforce, is the user who they say they are? Do they have access, or should we give them access to the right application? Is the device secured, etc.? In the middle, the workplace, again, if the user passes the authentication check and the health check of the system, what is the level of access that I want to give them, right? If we think about maybe a branch teller versus a security guard versus the branch manager, you may have different levels of access, right? In a branch or in the headquarters. The network should be segmented to prevent, we call it east-west traffic overflow, meaning that a compromised system could potentially access things that they shouldn't access, or talk to other people on or other systems on the network that they should not. So being able to grant access to a system and a device based on the things that we require. And then again, lastly, protecting our applications. So I'm going to give some examples. The solution we have to start off is Duo. Duo provides multi-factor authentication, which means it could be an application push, it could be a biometric, could be a phone call, but the idea is it's not only what you have, such as a laptop, but it's also what you know, could be a password, or it could be the application that's installed on your device. The second thing that we do is we do that health check on the device to make sure that it has all the necessary requirements, regardless of which endpoint solution you have, whether it be best of breed, next generation X type of solutions, or it's antivirus, or it's any of the other requirements that you have. So as long as we get all of those, then you're allowed access, regardless of whether it's wired, wireless, or VPN. MDM can also be leverage there for managing that endpoint. So things like Intune as an example. And then what you can do is you can integrate that device and user intelligence into other systems as well. So we can share identity. So that way my firewall is equipped with this information. My other applications, I can do things like single sign-on, so the user doesn't have to keep entering their username and password. Once you authenticate once, you authenticate to all the systems. And of course, we have a full suite of integrations from on-premises to SaaS, VPN, email, and into a custom application. So if you have your own applications, we can also add a layer of security to those systems by providing multi-factor authentication. This also is applicable as we move into a passwordless future. So I don't have to enter anything. As soon as I access an application, my method of multi-factor authentication is then triggered. Could be the same thing, right? Could be a telephone call. It could be a push to my phone, etc. Now, taking a look at the workplace, the idea here is to provide the least privilege access for that system. I don't want to give, full blanket access to my entire environment. I want to say that's user Joe. He is part of HR. This is user Sally. She's part of finance, or whichever group, however they're defined. They should have different access levels, right? Depending upon their group membership. That also, again, prevents that the issue of an infected machine kind of spreading out. And Tony mentioned the ransomware and that sort of thing. That's been very prevalent because of the sprawl and spread of things like WannaCry, meaning that they're spreadable on the network. And so we need to have the identification of these devices when they connect, the segmentation part, and we need to be able to monitor what those systems are doing, right? That's part of the framework as well. Going back and looking at what is that host doing on my network, okay? And then lastly, once I know what that system is, once I've safely segmented it on the network, I should then also be able to say, that system, what can it access and how do I want to send that traffic? That is the software-defined WAN piece of the workplace. So we talked about connecting into the environment. We talked about the software-defined piece and monitoring. I'm going to give some examples of that. Big shift here, which is the move to software-defined, which basically means instead of having a kind of fixed MPLS or fixed transport at the branch and having to do all this manual configuration, customers are opting for next generation wide area networks where you plug the device in, it registers with the management system, and then you can define which way you want to send your traffic. So if you've got two low-cost DSL lines from Singtel as an example, what you can do is you can say, I want this critical traffic to go over link number 1. Everything else go on link 2 to make sure your business can run effectively. If something happens to that link, I want the traffic to fail over to the secondary link, and I want business critical traffic to be prioritized more so than, let's say, email or YouTube or something like that. So SD-WAN gives you programmability, very easy, typically from a single dashboard where you can pick and choose where you want your applications to go. It gives you fault tolerance, and it also saves you a bunch of money on the WAN part. And if you're looking for, there's many managed service providers that will do the management for you because it's really straightforward. And in the case of Cisco, we've baked in security capabilities inside those branch routers or the branch of one type systems. So both Meraki, Cisco Meraki devices, and the Cisco SD-WAN product that we have. So again, centralized management, centralized QoS, centralized routing, and all of these security features. So for security features, we're talking about a branch that has a direct internet connection, things like having an enterprise-grade firewall baked inside of the router, intrusion prevention, URL filtering to say people should or should not go to this list of websites, advanced malware protection to examine the files that are passing through the router, so where users are going. Adding in things like cloud connectivity. You might have heard of a fairly new term called SASE, SASE. That is about the stack of security products that you typically had in an internet or DMZ, moving those into the cloud. So we'll talk about that in a moment. All of these capabilities are inside the same device that does your secure SD-WAN. Okay, as I mentioned, all centrally managed. This is one example, vManage, or it could be, again, Meraki, managed in the cloud. And you also get analytics. Who is using up most of the bandwidth? Which application is that? Has there been any time where my service provider didn't deliver the quality that they were supposed to? Did my WAN line go down and I missed traffic? All of that stuff is in there for you. And we partner with some of the largest IT companies in the world, like Microsoft. You can read the example below. The fact that we have peering points with them means we can deliver your cloud applications like Office 365 faster than even without, right? So it's quite interesting. If you have your own applications that you plan to put in the cloud, very easy to connect a software-defined WAN router with those applications, right? Very straightforward. Here's an example, Woodforest National Bank, 750 branches, a couple million customers, accounts. And you know, with the pandemic, obviously a lot of the branches were closed. They found it difficult to service customers. Their call centers, everyone was working from home. So what they looked at is doing this project to replace and move to SD-WAN. You know, and you can read from James here that it was maybe the most successful projects they've ever done. They've replaced their old routers, traditional routers, to SD-WAN with programmability in there. They connected it up to the umbrella SASE cloud, which protected all of the branches when they go back live, or for those that did go back live. And it also provides security for the people working from home. Same stack of virtual services, which I'll talk about in a moment, all from one console. And it doesn't matter if the branch is connected by internet or LTE, 4G, you know, et cetera, right? All of the branches can connect to one central place and you have the control there. The good news is we also have that control point in Singapore. So if any of you are looking at Meraki or Cisco SD-WAN and Umbrella, all of those services are right there in Singapore within the borders of the country. So what is the SASE framework, the Security Access Services Edge? If you look at where it says security as a service, things like DNS security, secure web browser like a proxy, a cloud firewall, data loss prevention is a service we just added, cloud access broker, which means we can interface with things like Box and Dropbox to make sure that people aren't sending things that they shouldn't. IPS is built in there, browser isolation, SSL decryption for things that we want to look at. This means when you connect a branch, regardless of size, you connect it to all of these services that are in the cloud that gives you one console to look at, and everything is right there. Very, very simple to get connected and very, very simple for you to manage. If it was a user working from home, you can see the remote worker there. Same exact services, but applied to one individual device. Okay, so you could have a branch regardless of size, or you could have an individual user working from a laptop at a coffee shop or at home, being able to have these services. For applications like cloud apps or even on-premises apps, we do have the ability to do VPN or clientless VPN using the Duo gateway. So if you don't want to deploy a whole stack of firewalls to do VPN, we do have some capabilities there as well. So the whole protection suite for security, that ties in nicely with the SD-WAN. So as I mentioned, you've got all of those features around QoS, fault tolerance, et cetera. You can connect your SD-WAN branch to that stack of security and have everything in one box. Very, very simple. And there's managed security providers in Singapore that will help you manage all of these capabilities in in one box, and it's very, very easy to roll out. As I mentioned, some of the partnerships we have, we peer with Microsoft at over 95% of their locations. So we have our equipment basically right beside them, which means we can deliver an optimized service for any of you that are running on Office 365, which is really great. The Singapore performance is great. And also you may be thinking, okay, lots of security features. How do we stack up to the competition? This test was done late last year by an independent company called AV Test, using their own samples, their own websites, all of their own testing methodology, and Cisco's Umbrella, which is our SASE offering, came out on top. So you will see the detection rate of 96+%, higher than everyone else that was tested. And we're just adding more capabilities and increasing that number. Lastly, this is around the workload. As I mentioned, many of you have applications that are not delivered in the cloud. Maybe they're traditional servers sitting inside the data center that you'd like to be able to move to the cloud or virtualize, but trying to figure out how to do that. This is where the secure workload can help. It is a agent-based solution. Regardless of wherever the application is, I can still manage the application control. I can look at, see what's happening down to the process level. I can do inter-app kind of modeling to understand who accesses this application, how does that application talk to other services and other containers in my environment. So it gives me a really nice baseline and profile to be able to apply security policy. So as I mentioned at the bottom, you've got the insights, the visibility and forensics based on process inventory, CVS, other inventory information that we can get around attack severity, that sort of thing. Next level up is the segmentation policy. So you can define the user. This user should not be able to access my HR application, and it's very easy to create a policy. And a policy is not based on IP addresses or location or all that stuff. We're tying an identity to my application service, and I can report on the policy and the compliance of that device. Last level up, this is the process level security that happens. We watch the system in real time to look for abnormalities, to look at heuristic and behavioral anomalies within the application. So you get all of this, plus we're adding in new network visibility and telemetry with our ThousandEye acquisition, merging all this together. So you get network controls, you get security automation, threat detection, and you get a bandwidth reporting and control. So all of this is baked into Tetration or secure workload. Single dashboard, very easy to use policy. Customers really like it from how easy it is to access the data within the system. Deployable across your public cloud, your private cloud, or even legacy servers that you may have. So if you deploy it on a server, you move that server to a virtual machine, maybe you containerize it and put it in AWS later. The same policy can be applied no matter where the system is. So with that, that was the first or the introduction to the individual products that we talk about when we talk with customers around zero trust. It is the workforce, the workplace, and the workload. We can share information across these different solutions to enhance each solution. So the capabilities we talked about, how to establish trust. It is based on not just the user, do they have their username and password, but also the multi-factor component. What is the health and posture and hygiene of that endpoint? What is the level of access do I want to give that system wherever they're connected? Wired, wireless, VPN, accessing a SaaS application. I can also do that type of checking. So we could say, you can't use this SaaS application unless your antivirus is turned on, as an example, or your browser is up to date, or Java has been removed, or whatever that happens to be. That's based on the trust that we make at different points in the network. And then with the workload component, we also verify that access end to end. We also look at what's happening on the not just the endpoint, but on the server side as well. And then a whole bunch of really cool technology. We didn't talk about today, but network visibility, cloud visibility, all of that good stuff. So we have a solution across the board. And I think this is why Forrester has us as a leader. We do have a very comprehensive solution, and they said that we are the only vendor to provide solutions from the workforce through the workplace and to the workload. We've been a leader for the last 3 years, and I think we're going to move further up and to the right. So with that, I'd like to say thank you all very much for the time this Friday afternoon. I hope everyone stays safe, and I'll pass the ball back over to AiSP. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Timothy. So to all the attendees, if you have any questions for me, feel free to type Q&A function and we'll address during Q&A. So now let's hand over the time to Elvin, who is the Regional Vice President of Tanium, who will be sharing about why speed and scale matter. Elvin, please.
Thanks, Karen. Can you see my screen?
Yep, but I think your camera is locked.
Okay. How is this?
Yes, great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the intro. Yeah, so thanks for having me at this in this session. I wanted to share that Tanium, we are actually 14 years old already. We started up in the US 14 years ago, but we really came to this part of the world only in late 2019, so just before the pandemic. And then, of course, we are looking for ways to get our brand out into the market. So we appreciate the partnership with AiSP. We've just become a corporate partner. And today I'm here to share about why speed and scale matters in terms of cybersecurity. So just to share a bit about myself first. I started my early career in IBM, NEC, and Oracle. In those days, technology, right? I covered the financial industry. So today we are here talking to the Singapore FinTech Association. I gotta say it's very different at that time. We did a lot of core banking, self-service banking. We were trying to strike out doing things like cash deposit machine as an example. Imagine depositing cash and depositing rupiah, and it recognized as 500 Singapore dollars. So those were the challenges of those days. And then those were the times when we also came about and started doing things like real-time gross settlement to reduce risk in the financial industry. So in those days, I learned quite a fair bit about how the banks make money. Whether you are depositing money or you're taking a loan, they make money both sides, right? And then I branched out to McAfee, starting in 2003 all the way to 2015. It's a good 12 years. In that 12 years, right, we saw the whole industry change. We used to call it IT security, and now it's called cybersecurity. I had customers who used to approach me for every single virus incident. It was a severity 1 issue in those days. Nowadays, we probably look at it and say, hey, severity 5, how can we deal with it? And then, of course, the network stack has grown as well. And those were the days as well when we started talking about the Security Operations Center. And Singapore was looking to create CSA at that time. Prior to CSA's time, they were trying to create the Operations Center that monitors the whole island and all the CIIs, right? Governance, risk, and compliance models, as well as the cybersecurity maturity model. So I left McAfee when Intel bought McAfee, and the brand changed. So I went to Palo Alto Networks, and in Palo Alto Networks, I learned about next-gen security. It was the onset of cloud, right? Cloud computing, and then I learned a lot about container security, shift left, pipeline, and all that. And finally into AI and machine learning. That was very new. It's a way to help to ease the burden on a human, because the human just can't keep up fast enough. So ease the burden on the human in order to try to figure out what's going on in cybersecurity. And then finally, of course, November 2019, I set up the Platinum office in Singapore. And today we are present here in the Singapore office. We are close to 20 people. So I can associate when earlier on we spoke about SMEs, right? We are in that size of SMEs. So today, in terms of my speech, I wanted to talk about speed. I wanted to talk about cybersecurity capabilities, and specifically relating to endpoints, which is where Tinium plays. We don't do network, so it's all endpoints. In terms of the pandemic, in fact, the pandemic has meant that a lot of our defense requirements, right, the thinking behind cybersecurity has moved to the endpoint as the last line of defense. So to talk about what capabilities you need, basically, we always say you can protect what you can't see. So visibility is important. Know what you have, not just at the surface level, down to the detail, right? Hardware assets, software assets, operating systems, versions, which is important because vulnerabilities will hit certain versions and not others. And then talking about versions, talking about vulnerabilities, cyber hygiene. So this is where you set baselines, think about how you want to protect yourself. I always say this part is the one where you say, did I lock the door before I leave my house? So you set baselines, you harden your OS, you set compliance standards, do vulnerability management, patching, file integrity monitoring, basically keep yourself healthy pre-attack. And then during the attack, you ask what are the defenses that's possible, right? How do you block them? Do you blacklist them? Do you do packet filtering? Sandboxing, which is a relatively new technology, 10 years maybe. And then, of course, the thinking behind here has always been multi-layer defense. We'll talk about that in a bit. And finally, we know that not all attacks can be blocked. So in the end, you need a response plan. So the question is, how do you react? So during the attack, how do you react? How do you detect and validate and then contain? And once you are able to eradicate, how do you learn from that incident? So assess the entire incident and then adjust your cyber hygiene posture in order to be able to deal better with the situation. So my talk is going to be across all four of these and injecting the speed element that I talked about, speed and scale element, and with respect to the endpoints. So in a study that we did with Forrester, basically, we learned that 55% of organizations use more than 20 tools. So across operations and security, operations is where you maintain the hygiene, and security is where you detect the attack and quickly try to remediate. So 55% of organizations say they use more than 20 tools, and 40% of CIOs say that makes it, the silos, right, makes it extremely difficult to identify the severity of the issue and to minimize the business impact. And then close to 9 in 10 of IT leaders basically report that the data silo is creating business challenges, especially with respect to digital transformation initiatives. So why do many tools make it difficult, and why are the silos there, right? So if you look at this, a tweet, somebody tweeted this on Twitter, I saw, and I thought, okay, it made a lot of sense, so I took a screen capture. And if you say, how many Windows hosts do I have? You will find that depending on the product that you use, each product tells you a different thing. And as a result, the person operating that product will tell you a different number. And actually, it is very true. I had the opportunity to have a coffee before the pandemic, actually it's over a year ago now, with a foreign bank in Singapore. Their presence is maybe about 200 or so. So when we asked them, how many endpoints do you have? His answer was, well, I think it's around 200. And I said, how will you find out? And he says, generally what will happen if he does need to do it is that he will, get 5 people, ask them to go out and assess the situation. So assess meaning go to each console, find out, and then literally walk the ground maybe to count. And in about a month, they come back and they tabulate and they come up with a number. So that's very laborious, very human, and very tough to get a real number, right? So if you don't have a real number, and now especially with the pandemic, how do you then assess how do you protect them? So I say the difficulty in getting that real number out is the ever-changing landscape. You are trying to put a torchlight and say, hey, how many do we have? And meanwhile, you have new employees joining, so they get issued new computers or laptops. Some people will come along, it's time to upgrade my laptop. You may need to run a project, so you start up a server, and then some people are working from home, they bring their home PCs in. Meanwhile, on the other hand, employees have resigned, so you need to take away their asset. Some of the assets may be lost or stolen, so you need to figure out how to manage it while removing it from your landscape. You may have a project that's canned, the server is powered off, it's still sitting there, but how do you deal with it? And of course, you may also have assets decommissioned and so on. So these are ever-changing, it's a constant flux day to day. The larger your organization, the tougher it becomes. How do you get ahead of this curve? So I would say, if we can inject speed, how does that impact this visibility, right? So can we inventorize faster than the landscape change? So this is a Tanium console, a screen capture basically. So you can see we basically have a search bar. It's a bit like a Google for your enterprise or for your organization. And you can ask questions in plain English. So in here, we ask the question, I want to know about install application. We type install applications and it will give us the right syntax. And so the syntax is get install applications from all machines. And then we come to here and we filter for Firefox. And you can see that we instantaneously get out the number of machines as well as the number of versions for each of the versions of Firefox. This question is asked to all machines live. It's not a database readout. I think we are all in technology. If you're reading from database, it is a no-brainer. It's very fast. But if you need to count faster than the landscape change, then you need to go out live and you get the answer live, right? So moving from that, if you need to talk about security, and in security, we always talk about running processes on the endpoint, then it doesn't make sense if you're pulling the running processes from the database anymore. You literally need it to be live in order to make sense of the security incident. So to be able to get that out fast puts you in a shape to inventorize. And when we count, and if you're counting running processes and looking for threats, in fact, then it makes a lot of sense that you can count faster than the change. So this is what speed does to visibility. Now let's move on to cyber hygiene, right? So in the cyber insurance claims report, so this was H1 2020 by the coalitions. They actually mentioned the root cause of security failures are largely known and predictable. The implementation of basic cybersecurity controls could have avoided a majority of the claims and losses. If you look at that, and basically what it's saying is that if you know that you have locked your house before you left your house, then you will know that your house is generally going to be secure. And I would say in IT, we have a flux of movement, right? And that's the reason why it is harder to secure. Let's have a look at what MAS says relative to cyber hygiene. So there are, this was actually 6 August 2019 when they issued the notice on cyber hygiene. And I think it was a year before they made it mandatory. Somewhere around 2020 August, we had to comply. And then I guess for some organizations, they may have extended it. But there are basically 6 standards that they ask for in terms of cyber hygiene. Number 1 is that you must know your administration accounts. And that's because the admin account can create havoc if they get through to your computers. So in order to minimize damage, generally you ask for user accounts to be assigned and for admin accounts to be locked away. So you want to have a look at the admin accounts. You want to make sure that security patches are there, applied within defined time frame, and mitigating controls are in place for systems that cannot be patched. So this was interesting, right? Because last year we saw the Australian government got hit, and when they came out, basically they were missing patches. It was not because they couldn't defend, right? If they had got their cyber hygiene right, they would have defended it. So security patches is important. And then of course, security standards, they want us to write down the security standard and ensure that systems are tested on an ongoing basis. So it's not a simple thing, I think, because you need a written set of standards, right? And then finally, of course, network parameter defense, make sure that you have something to control people on unauthorized network traffic. And of course, I say this is a bit difficult now because people are all working from home. The malware protection one, it's not new to MAS. I think it's been around for a long time. When PCI standards came about more than 10 years ago, it was already there as well. So basically, everybody should run some sort of malware protection to mitigate where applicable. And then finally, multi-factor authentication. So let's have a look at how organizations typically implement this cyber hygiene process, right? This is an example. So generally, you would have your security team come in and do a vulnerability scan, right? And as they scan, they get results. They will export that results into a spreadsheet and pass the spreadsheet on to the operations team. And then the operations team will quickly complete the patch and export a list of the work that they've done back to the security team. I mean, this is a generic process. The security team generally will not trust the operations team, so they will scan again to make sure it's done. And some of the vulnerabilities, of course, are closed. You can close it off. And there will be some remaining because maybe the operations team forgot to reboot, as an example. And because it didn't reboot, therefore, it's still there. So they will export the remaining vulnerability back to operations again, and they run through their workflow again to complete. And it circles around a bit, and then it completes. So this is a typical process, I would say. We have, over the years, tried to shorten this, but it still remains a general process like this. But if you look at vulnerabilities, right, it is not something cast in stone that is static, right? It moves. There are new vulnerabilities emerging every day. So you will layer this process again and again as and when new vulnerabilities emerge or new systems needs to be patched. So it is a difficult, complex process in a way because of that. Now, if you look at the time frame, right, I draw a simple graph. I apologize for the barebone look of this. It's very simple. There's a quantity of vulnerabilities, and it will come down over time as the patching is done. And then over time, right, so you get a general graph like that. Now imagine that new vulnerabilities emerge and you need to start the process again, right? So you will get graphs like this. So new workflow, new work to be done. And generally what that means is that your vulnerabilities, the quantity will hover at this level, right? To kind of like amortize, to kind of like smoothen out the three lines that you saw just now. Basically, your quantity will hit around this level. Now, assuming you can patch way faster, find the vulnerabilities way faster, patch them way faster, then you will find that the quantity drops and you emerge much better because the outcome will look like this. So this is something that we initiate because of the speed that Tanium is able to do. This is an actual customer, government customer in the US. When they put Tanium in, we observed them for a while. And then we observed them through one patch cycle, the January patch Tuesday. And then this year in February, when patch Tuesdays came in again, we started with Tanium to do the patching, and the speed came in, and you can see the outcome. Basically, what we're trying to do, right, is to minimize exposure to the bad guys by plugging the holes as much as we can do. So if there are patches that is needed, quickly scan, find the machines that need them, and quickly patch them so that it reduces your risk. So that's cyber hygiene in terms of patching. I move on to talking about security standards, right, which is another part of the MAS cyber guidelines. So there are two ways to do this. If you want to maintain security standards, generally the market looks at it in two ways. The first way is to monitor for drift, and if it drifts, find a logical time to remediate. So these are usually this is usually used in an area where you don't want to disrupt the business, and the business owner could be very powerful in the organization. They say, no, don't touch my system during this time. So if you can't touch the system, their application guys will do what they need to do to make sure the business runs. So over time you can see the drift, and then you come in to remediate. The second option is to enforce, right? Lock it down so that the drift doesn't even occur. This is the hammer approach in a way. And if any change is needed, ask for the administrator to release it before the change can be made. So we support both standards. We will scan and get the drift. So where we check, and if it doesn't pass, it comes out in red. And if it passes, it comes out in green. So generally, you can see the compliance to the different type of standard. And you can drill down and see which is a specific control that has drifted, and then you can take action against it. So that's in monitoring drift and remediating. In enforcing, basically, it's a lockdown. So we enforce using a module we call enforce, and we basically create a policy, lock down that policy, lock down application control, what applications can run and what can't run. Look at the host firewall management, lock down certain ports, for example, lock down the AV management rules. This is all within this policy. So malware protection is all encapsulated here. Look for drive encryption so that you protect your data, and then generally use this to harden environment so that the security posture improves. So with that, with these two parts, basically in terms of the guidelines, let's have a look at it again. So in terms of the guideline, I've covered 3 parts of it, and I will talk about the 4th part in the next section. The network defense and multi-factor authentication we don't do, but I guess having listened to Cisco earlier, they do both of that. So you can you're covered with this the 2 speakers today. So let's talk about the admin accounts. So generally, when we look at admin accounts, we are worried about one thing. We are worried about lateral movement. If I have administration rights, I can hop from one PC to the next PC to the next PC. Okay. When we think about it on a brick and mortar basis, you're looking at a guy going from PC to PC, why are you coming? Why are you here, right? But in the cyber world, the hop happens so fast because it's all done in bits and bytes, right? So how does that happen? The first thing is, when you log on to an application, right, you automatically create sessions. So you log onto a system or to an application, you create the sessions. When you log off, this session still remains in memory. So if a hacker is able to land on your PC, so through a phishing attack, very commonly it's phishing attacks, or through any other types of social engineering type of attacks, they land on that PC. If your credential that's currently in memory, if your credential is a admin credential, it gives them a lot of ability to use the same credential and hop on to the next computer. So it will look like this. From one computer that has a session, it hops onto the next computer, and then you realize that maybe from an AD perspective, right, maybe this user has been allocated admin rights into certain systems. So we found that over time, right, as people come and go, the AD gets quite messy, and the admin rights are actually nested within groups so that you lose visibility on that. So what happens is, if you are able to then now look at that PC, and maybe this PC is your, I don't know, chief scientist, right? And in this PC, you store all of your codes for your fintech solution. Then you realize that, hey, 11 other endpoints can come in through a first hop. And because this 270 can hop onto this 11, therefore they can do 2 hops to get to your PC, to get to your intellectual property. And then you realize that, hey, actually the exposure is quite big, because on the 3rd hop alone, I can get to 3,200 PCs. So what we do is that we allow this visualization, and with this visualization, it creates the ability for you to go out and remediate, and use Tanium to remediate if needed. Yeah. So let's move on to the 3rd pillar, which is cyber defense. We talked about cyber defense earlier, and whether the defense in that means implementing different capabilities or different vendors. And this is a very interesting one, because it has evolved in the market to be different vendors, because most customers say, I want best of breed. But when you do best of breed, you give out certain things. So let me talk about that. If you deploy and operationalize cyber defense, it will look like this, because every endpoint needs to be managed. Generally, you put a server there as a midpoint, as a relay server, because you want to save the bandwidth on the WAN link, for example. or you want to be able to scale, so you have many, many different distribution servers. So the challenges here are the dead agents. So for example, the endpoint agent can die. As you're upgrading a version of a software, the agent just didn't upgrade correctly, or the user shut down the machine before the agent is able to upgrade, or maybe even a new software that's installed conflicted with the agent and therefore the agent died. You can also have a relay malfunction or new endpoints that join the network. So you can see the flux of issues that I spoke about just now. Meanwhile, in order to do defense in depth, you roll out multiple solutions. So you roll out many solutions and you replicate a lot of the infrastructure. And then you realize that, hey, actually, I do not have a view of the solution, a view of the issue anymore. So what many security organizations do, and this was years that we were spent building the SOC, right? We take the alerts and the data from the solutions and we pipe them out into the SOC. And once you pipe it out into the SOC, you realize that, hey, did I get enough data? If you have not collected enough data, you will not be able to see the security incident. If you collected too much data, then there's a lot of data for the security analysts to go through. And therefore, the insight on the incident is delayed. So what we did is to try to speed that up by using AI and machine learning. But you realize that in order to do that, the larger the data set, right, the longer the AI takes. So it's really very short term. And in long term, right, data storage and stuff like that, it ends up being stored on tape. So you lose sight of the long term type of attacks. So meanwhile, in order to operate this, you realize it's very infrastructure heavy. You need a lot of people and a lot of people with security know-how. This is a very difficult thing to do. So what do we do if we have speed, right? What's the impact if we have speed? So you have the same endpoints that you need to protect, and you have the same SOC, let's say, set up, basically it's a security operations center. It's a room, right, where people are looking at events. And if we now have speed, guess what? We don't really necessarily need to bring the data back, right? Each endpoint can store its own record. And each endpoint can store enough information. In fact, we estimate maybe 1 gig per month. So 12 gig for 12 months, you actually can get very long-term storage. And at the point when you detect a threat, you can literally ask, right? Ask a question in plain English, know what's happening in seconds. And that actually gives the SOC heightened situational awareness. It's very instantaneous. There's an exploit on SolarWinds. How many SolarWinds, how many copies of the SolarWinds software do I have or appliance that's running in my environment? There is a Microsoft Exchange vulnerability. Actually, this happened 3 months in a row already this year. Do I run Microsoft Exchange, or where is my Microsoft Exchange running? Stuff like that. You can actually ask the question and you can diagnose and you can get heightened situational awareness very fast. That's the impact of speed. And then you can take action and remediate by taking action straight away. And talking about action, that leads me down to my next segment, which is about cyber response. So in cyber response, this is the scenario, right? You wake up in the morning, there's a new vulnerability, exploits are already out there in the wild. Your board of directors want to know what's the potential impact. They call the CIO calls CISO. I mean, if there's a team, you put together the team, right? How big is the team? And you put them together regardless. And most customers tell me that they will get back to the board of directors within 2 hours. And I say, actually, is that 2 hours for you to know, or 2 hours because you can't keep the board of directors waiting? So many organizations say, yes, I can't keep them waiting. I do a quick estimate. I give something in 2 hours. Meanwhile, my team continues to work and we probably will come up with something in 2 weeks. So generally, I say it's too long, right? For such a scenario, for us to try to manage it, the response is just too long. And so we try to shorten it with speed. So in security, we always say we are always behind the curve. When there's a file-based virus, somebody invented the antivirus to do an on-access scanner. When a file powers up, detect the offending code and try and delete them. That's a very simple antivirus. When mass mailers came out in late 1990s, Blockport 25, it seems to be so simple. Why didn't we think of it earlier? And this is part of hygiene. Early 2000s, hackers were using buffer overflow to do remote code execution. And the whole industry came up with the idea, hey, why not have this code to do buffer overflow prevention? Just monitor for buffer overflow. Every time it does it, I'll just kill it. And it goes on and on, right? And basically what I'm trying to say here is that there will always be a new tactic. And in that new tactic, right, it takes the hacker, it takes the defender some time to figure out, hey, this is a new tactic. And then let's try to defend that tactic. But the tactics are getting more and more sophisticated. So let's look at the timeline, right? How long does it really take in order to do that? There's a new attack. Generally, we come up with a new security engine. Or maybe if your engine is good enough, let's try to just come up with a new signature, and the existing engine maybe can block it already. But this whole cycle, in fact, is at least a year or two in the making, because the new attack is new, right? So you research the attack, you understand what's happening. It takes the gurus to think of a way to mitigate, and then they test the theory, write out the code, do a test on those old attacks to see if you can catch. If you can catch, you productize. And this is where I saw, all the new products that are coming out. There are always new security products. And then you start selling. At the time when you start selling, the market doesn't know who you are. So it takes a while some more for the customer to understand what is this new security product. And then the end user becomes aware, they run a project. The RFP takes 2 months, 3 months, I don't know how long, depending on the organization, I guess. And finally, they implement. I say this whole cycle takes you a year or two. And what that means is that for every new attack, and the market likes to throw it at us, right? 0-day attack. For every new 0-day attack that's happening, if you don't have the luck that your signature or your engine already takes care of it, then it's going to take you another 2 years to handle it. So talking about that, right? Then you fine tune and you make the product better. So talking about that, let's look at how the market has evolved in terms of endpoints and endpoint protection. So we know, the known malwares nowadays, we think it's very easy. In those days when I first started out, it was a severity 1 issue, like I mentioned. We have now evolved, right, into something called EPP, endpoint protection. Generally, it includes antivirus, anti-spyware, and anti-advertisement, host intrusion prevention, host firewall. It includes a long list of point products that's been made into a suite that we call endpoint protection. And generally, it deals with known attacks. And of course, some unknown if the behavior can catch, right? If the unknown malware then manage to somehow still come through, then they are able to get the lateral movement. And what the industry has said is that, hey, actually you can't do it just like that, right? So they came up with the idea of an endpoint detection and response software. And in doing that, what we're trying to do is to say, hey, if we can't block them upfront, why not we detect and we respond? And some of this response can be automated, so it's blocked immediately. But some are less automated. It takes a human to read it and maybe to manually block. But what about the new attacks that will still come, right? There will be hardware-based attacks, or there will be, when SolarWinds hit, nobody blocked. And then they say, oh, it's a new supply chain attack. And there'll be a next new attack and a next new attack. So what are you going to do about that? So what Tinium does is, because we are so fast, we generally can give you great real-time asset visibility. We give you real-time compliance visibility, patching visibility, and that allows you to then do some threat hunting and incident response quickly, right? So in threat hunting, we are actually saying, look at each endpoint, look at the current state running, active processes, network connections that's there, loaded files, in-memory artifacts. Look at the data that's sitting on a hard disk, the log files and entries and whatever else. Look at historical data, telemetry. And with that, you potentially can hunt for a threat before the threat takes action. This is a 0-day threat that's unknown, right? And take action with speed so that you're able to block some of these attacks. Okay, it takes some knowledge. It takes a lot of good questioning techniques. And I got to say, we are a bit like a doctor here, right? When a patient comes to the doctor and he says, hey, I'm sick, the doctor will say, in what way are you sick? Do you have a fever? Do you have a cough? Sore throat? Stomach upset? If you don't tell the doctor anything, actually the doctor can't do anything with you. So you've got to be able to quickly ask the right question and understand the situation as it evolves, and then finally be able to take care of the situation. So let me finish off with my last slide. I just want to introduce the Tanium endpoint platform. We look at the remote endpoints, your office, PCs, your data center, and your cloud as endpoints, right? And of course, you have OT and mobile devices maybe as well. We plant an agent, and the agent will talk to our engine. Our engine, as you can see earlier, I described, we basically communicate to all endpoints extremely fast in a way that's at least 1,000 times faster than the normal. Within seconds, you get the answer back. We give you a natural language search, so it looks like the Google bar that I spoke about earlier. That allows you to question and get back answers very fast. As you get back the answers, you can visualize the data and prioritize. And you can also use this to do the lateral movement assessment that I spoke about earlier. Meanwhile, we integrate to third parties. I'll talk about that in a bit. And on top of this entire platform, we built use cases. I call them use cases. Many other solution vendors out there, they will call them products. So our use case is, asset inventory. We help you to discover new endpoints joining your network. We inventorize them. We inventorize your software. You will know exactly what software you're using and what you're not. If you're not using them, why not just decom them and save some money? We help you to with any performance monitoring on the endpoint. We look for compliance management, help you to harden the systems, keep them compliant, report to MAS with that. Do software distribution. Some customers in the banking sector has told me before in the past, I need to manage my software. I only run 2 versions of any software so that I lower my attack surface. Meanwhile, scan for vulnerabilities, patch them, explore your data risks, look at where your secret data potentially might reside, and use us as an incident response capability as well, and many more use cases. Basically, we look at each of these as a use case, and the possibilities are endless depending on how you want to use us. And meanwhile, we scale extremely well with just a single console. We don't need, a huge chunk of infrastructure in order to get going. So what that does is that it sets you up, right? And I always say, if you're a new company, you get to do a technology leap. It sets you up for the future without needing to invest a lot of the in-between technologies. I talk about the integration to third parties. So we integrate to a lot of solutions, whether you need to grow into, a place where you need to use a CMDB, a SIEM, NAC enforcement with Cisco and Palo Alto, taking threat intelligence from many sources, and as well as integrating to the cloud, where the cloud instances potentially are ephemeral in nature. So it comes and goes, and you need to quickly identify and have visibility in order to be able to protect. So that's my last slide. I thank you for your time this afternoon. Thanks for joining, and thanks for spending time. Stay safe.
Thank you. Yeah. So if anybody has any questions for Alvin, feel free to type in Q&A function in Zoom, and we'll address it now. So we have some questions from the attendees. So maybe can we invite Timothy to answer one of the questions first? So can you clarify or define what hybrid cloud file storage technology is and how it differs from cloud file storage?
Sorry, was that for me?
I think it's for Timothy.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm not exactly sure I'm following the question. Hybrid cloud file storage technology, as in how it differs from cloud. I would assume, just by the term hybrid, meaning that maybe it's sync between on premises and the cloud, or depending upon the application in use, the storage, the data may reside locally. I do have customers that will have front ends in the cloud, but the data is actually kept on site. So they bring up a VPN, so that way they can control access to the data. They might have regulatory reasons for doing so, and tighter control over where that data resides. And if I may, there was another question by anonymous attendee that said, how important is it for a company to implement the Zero Trust framework? I think a lot of frameworks have been out for a while. I mentioned Google, Forrester, Gartner has one. Everyone's got a framework. And there's NIST, CIS is one that I help a lot of customers with. I think any framework you look at will all have similar attributes where it covers from the endpoint to the network, to the wide area network, to the cloud, to the data center. And so there's different technologies that are going to be used in different places. There is no one single product that does everything. And so I think the frameworks help in that they help to identify gaps in existing capabilities. And they also help customers make the decision on whether or not they're okay with the risk that they're taking with that gap. Another one is the MITRE ATT&CK framework, or MITRE ATT&CK. That talks about, do you have the protection capabilities for individual attacks? So hopefully I was able to answer the questions. If not, please write them in chat and I'll respond there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Timothy. So now to Alvin, we have some questions. So maybe you can start with the questions from Sandy. With reference to the Twitter example mentioned, does it mean that Tanium can help us solve this issue and be single source of truth environment?
Yeah, okay. So the question is on the Twitter example, where different people see different numbers, and the different numbers is because they are using different products, and the products had date agents, therefore they didn't quite, it is actually a Venn diagram, right? One product sees a certain number of agents, the other product see a different number of agents, and so on. So what Tanium does is that we go out and we don't just push an installation, we also actively discover new endpoints that are joining our environment. And the discovery is very different. So a lot of times when you try to discover, many vendors use a population census type of way. They do a scan, and whatever they find, they think that that's it. But there will be PCs that are not powered on, and their PCs they are missing. They can't punch through a firewall, and therefore they miss it. So what we do is a neighborhood watch way, where every endpoint is smart enough to look at the neighborhood. And if you look at the IP and the IP address range, right, where it is empty is where the new endpoint is likely to come. We pay very special attention to that empty space, and the neighbors will know. Actually, you'll know, right? How many people stay next door to you? Actually, you will know. So that's our tactic. And by doing that, generally, when Tanium gets installed, we will see another 10 to 20% more endpoints than the customers thought they had. So imagine going to MAS and saying that I'm 95% compliant, but you're 95% compliant on 80% of the endpoints that you see. So you're not quite there. And of course, it's a checkbox. Potentially, you report to MAS and that's it. You've not done anything wrong. But in the interest of cybersecurity, we want to do it to the nth degree, right? To make it right. So yes, we will find more endpoints, and in fact, most customers who use us, 9 of the top 10 banks in the US use us. They see us as a single source of truth. So that's for that question. There's another question around zero-day. So we are hearing of new zero-day attacks becoming more frequent. Do you have any advice to cope? So a lot of times, one of the problems here is this, right? The new attack comes and the security industry tells you, oh, you need a new product to fix the new attack. But the new product will always be behind the cycle. So in one of my slides, I covered that, right? The new attack happens first. The community research and come up with a product. And by the time you implement the product, it's 1 to 2 years late. So in fact, every new product to cope with a new attack is a tough one, which is why we propose that you actively hunt for threats. And actually in security, we say that whether you like it or you don't like it, the hacker is probably already in your network. So what would you do if you think that they are already in your network? So for us, you can ask a question and get back answers within seconds, right? Then what we do is that the question that we will ask is there a new process running today that did not run the last 30 days? So that's an example question. And by doing that, you identify the outlier and then you investigate the outlier. Okay, so I say there's a human aspect to it, but that's how you would deal with the next 0 day, right? Then in terms of 0 day, the other aspect of it is that if you do the right cyber hygiene, you probably would have blocked it anyway. So what can you do in terms of hardening? What can you do in terms of patching that will help you to block on a proactive basis without having to buy another product? Okay, so that's my answer for that. Okay, next question. We see MAS providing new guidelines on an ongoing basis. Does this mean we need to implement a new technology on an ongoing basis? I would say some yes, some no. Mostly I try to help you to be a no. Where do I see when it's a yes? When it's a yes, it could be like MAS when they first came out and say, hey, you need multi-factor authentication. And at the time, there was nobody doing it. Then that's a yes, right? You must implement something new. But when they say, for example, I think it was in 2016, they said, hey, you must have an early breach detection capability. They never say it's a product, right? So the question is, do you have a capability to do early breach detection? And if you have a flexible engine, so our question and answer capability is actually very flexible. And that's why I come from earlier when I say we built a new use case. And in fact, customers who are already on our threat response use case, which is quite a lot of the banks, the US banks that operates out of Singapore, in fact, they did not need to go out and buy an EDR product. They leverage our threat response capability to mitigate the early breach detection. So it's a yes and no answer, but I hope that my explanation gives enough context. Oh, the last one is the next question is actually quite specific. What is the size of the Tanium agent? How easily is it installed? I guess you mean in my network. So the size is very small. I believe it is about 25 meg or something like that. It takes maybe 0.1 to 0.5% of your CPU. We do not hook onto your OS. That's a key thing I always say in a security space, right? We try not to hook. If you need to hook onto your OS, you need to reboot. And if you hook onto the US, generally you conflict with some other security software that's running. So for us, it is a very lightweight agent. We sit there as a service, and we've had customers deploy 100,000 agents in 1 month. Depends on how aggressive you are. Generally, because we don't conflict with most software, some of these customers are pretty aggressive.
Okay, thank you, Alvin, for your sharing. And to the attendees, if there are no further questions, maybe we can 2 seconds for last questions to Timothy or Alvin before we conclude the webinar. Yep. So I think we are good with the questions. So thank you everyone for participating in our webinar today, and feel free to email Secretariat if you have any other questions. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you. Thank you, AiSP.